seemed to have beaten, or they could compose themselves and go after him. And he spent the night in Bethany. And now he's coming back in today's passage. Starting at 23. And then he went back to the temple, teaching. The high priest and leaders of the people came up and demanded, "Show us your credentials. Who authorized you to teach here?" Jesus responded, "First, let me ask you a question. You answer my question, and I'll answer yours. About the baptism of John, who authorized it? Heaven or humans?" They were put on the spot, and they knew it. They pulled back into a huddle and whispered, "If we say heaven, he'll ask us why didn't we believe him? And if we say humans, we'll be up against all the crowds because they hold John up as a prophet." They decided to concede this round to Jesus, and they said to him, "We don't know." Jesus said, "Then neither will I answer your question. But tell me this, what do you think about this story? A man had 2 sons. He went up to the first son and said, 'Son, go out for the day and work in the vineyard.' The young son answered, 'I don't want to go.' Later on, he thought better of it and went. The father gave the same command to the second son, and he answered, 'Sure, I'll go.' But he never went. Which of these 2 sons did what the father asked?" They said, "The first." Jesus said, "Yes, and I'll tell you that the crooks and whores who are going to precede you into God's kingdom. John came to you showing you the right road, and you turned your nose up at him. But these crooks and whores believed him, even when you saw that they had changed lives. You didn't care enough to change and believe him." This is the word of God for the people of God. Now, I think Matthew had picked up in the other things they call them tax collectors and prostitutes, probably 2 people that were considered beyond repair. But we all know that that's not the case with God, is it? And rather than getting into an argument with them, Jesus mentioned John. And I thought that was pretty clever, because Jesus identifies John and himself with a long list of prophets that God had sent to the people, and more specifically to Jerusalem. And as history shows, they put most of them to death or ignored them. And once again, at this passage, the leaders were responding with strategies and trying to figure out how to maintain control rather than concern for the truth. Think about it. Wouldn't it be wise to keep in mind the fact that God knows our thoughts? Wouldn't it be wiser to pray for discernment, for truth in a contentious situation, rather than jockeying for what might be the best for us? It was either last week or the week before where Jesus said, all these things are impossible for man, but not impossible for God. I think we need to hear that as we listen to all the strife with the political wrangling. I didn't listen to the news this morning, so I don't even know if we have a budget or not. But between all kinds of division right now, people are putting themselves first. So this passage is about God blessing actions rather than cheap talk. Yes, it's about authority. And he had the authority to, in this parable, the father had authority to tell his sons, go work in the field. He didn't ask them. He told them, go work in the fields. So the question we have to do is we always try to put ourselves in these pictures of these parables, as Jesus usually would like us to do. So are we the ones that say, yeah, we'll go, and then find ourselves distracted and easier to make up an excuse than do the work? Or do we have a second change of heart? It's that change of heart, I think, that really makes a difference. Do we really need authority to act in love? Remember, Jesus gave us a new commandment. You were supposed to love your neighbor, love God and love your neighbor. And he says, love God first, but also love your neighbor as yourself. For this, not only do we have the obligation, but he also gives us the authority to carry out this command for ourselves. This authority we are given in this life is that authority over self. Unless you think it's simple, remember that the wages of sin are dead, and we've all been sinners. And as much as it breaks our hearts, we will probably continue to sin. So what does this authority do? Once we've been born again, we were born in that helpless estate. And being born again with God's salvation comes, whether it's a certificate or a baptismal certificate or whatever, comes the power and the authority to resist. But we still have free will. Before, free will or not, we couldn't resist sin. We always took the easier roads more often than not. But now with our salvation, we do have the authority to say, Satan, get out of here. But there's two thoughts here I want to get on this quick communion Sunday. Tussles over authority are not new. I take comfort in this disagreement over authority and clashes over opinions are not new. I find it happening today. I spent a little bit of a vacation up in Ticonderoga and got a little bigger picture of part of the French and Indian War, part of the Revolution, and even 1812. And the amazingness was the fact that they said, we're coming in, one group or another, we're coming in and we're going to take over. And we don't need authority. Our authority is power. So as Christians, you want to take that attitude with other folks. Just remember who really has the power, and it's our God. But now saying that, about that it's not new, here's a new insight for me, because we have a tendency to want to sit there and write people off way too easily. And that's why Jesus picked two of the most despicable people outside, probably unrepentant or can't be cleansed, and for his stories. What I find interesting, while the stakes are high, these leaders, he said, these people will get into heaven before you. Do you see a little difference? Before you. They have found the words of Christ and they followed. The first part of their life seemed a little on the messy side, just like the first son said, I'm not going. And they got thinking, I'll go. Dad's giving me everything. And that's them. Some of us, like the religious leaders, haven't got to that point yet. But there's hope in this passage. I find it very interesting that the same leaders that were trying to silence Jesus were also the ones that conspired to crucify him. Yet Jesus' final pronouncement is not ultimate condemnation, let alone expulsion from God's kingdom, but rather an opportunity for a reversal. These others represented an entirely different point of view that they didn't understand. They were outside their comprehension of what God would want in their kingdom. But let's not forget that these rulers, the chief priests and stuff, were still trying to honor God. They were just doing it in their own way. But God doesn't take note of stations in life. He pays attention to the hearts and to our actions. Yes, I hope we teach kids still that actions speak louder than words. He's precluding the fact that these rulers will not enter first, as they probably expected. After all, they were chief priests and so on. But they are not banished yet. So even despite their shortcomings, there is still room for them to change their mind, have a change of heart. They may have neglected their duties in caring for the people. But I find amazing passion and hope in the fact that he said, the least and the last and the lost will enter before. But he's still telling them they can enter. And on this World Communion Sunday, where we talk about everything all around the world, where our European point of view, as I saw all those wars, how we just came in and took over all kinds of property, and Native Americans really didn't have a lot of choice. But God still sees them. God sees all of us and knows that there's room for hope. There's room for grace. There's room for forgiveness. I have one personal story that I wasn't going to say, so it wasn't on this, but I've told you before that I've done some Bible study in prison ministries quite a while ago, trying to figure out where I should go. And I said, well, I don't really want to be here where I am today, so let me try this out. And a friend and I did 40 weeks in a prison doing some Bible study with folks. The only thing I can say after that is I wasn't called to that. But there was one young man that really stood out. They all had to tell their stories. Before you get on to the class or anything else, they all had to tell their stories. And you just had to get that out of the way in whatever time that took before you got to your class. And this one young man talked about how he was very active in the drug trade. He was kind of high up in this system. He was proud of the fact that he had a gun here, a little here, and a knife down here. And you know, friends got shot, but he somehow escaped and all this stuff, and finally got put in prison for 4 or 5 years. And then he fortunately came to Christ in that time. And he was told that he was saved. He was told that he could go into kingdom. And then he got out. And then his voice tone went down, and he soft, and he wouldn't look at us. Because when he got out there, he went out looking for the kingdom. Maybe he went to church and wasn't welcome. All I know is he started to reconnect with his old ways. And instead of just dealing and doing something, he got caught up in a rather violent murder, and he was in there for 25 to life. And there was long silence. And afterwards, he asked us to question. And it had to be God inspired for us, because I wouldn't have known. It's a life so much different than mine. He said, now I understand, after doing this Bible study some more, that it requires action and not just words. I'm saved, so therefore I can do what I want. No, you have to live it. Actions speak louder than words. But he says, what about me? I'm here for the rest of my life, probably. What difference can I make? I said, your story, you'll be here as an old man. The next time some young punk kid comes in like you were years ago, you set that turkey straight. Not only do you teach them about Christ, but you teach them about what needs to be, so that when that kid gets out of a 3 to 5 year sentence, he can go straight. Give him some hope, give him some guidance. Because if you can do that as the kids come in and out of this place, you will be doing the will of God. And from that point on, even though he was in the state pen, he saw hope. And that's the type of people that said, they will be in my kingdom. So there's hope. And there's motivation for us that walk a fine line, the free choice, and God's authority. The scary part is we still have a choice to deny it. The good news of the Bible is God will hound us. Christ will hound us. The Spirit will be with us. The presence will be with us wherever we are when we're willing to make a change. One little step at a time. One step forward, 3 backwards, 2 forward, 1 backwards. That's life. The promise of presence is probably the best part of the whole gospel. Amen.